President Trump is investing his time in Northeast Wisconsin with this rally tonight. Democrats also investing in Wisconsin, holding the Democratic National Convention in Milwaukee next summer. So does Wisconsin remain a battleground? You bet. The rally here at the Resch Center set to begin in a little bit less than an hour with President Trump, his son speaking over my shoulder right now, Donald Trump Jr. As far as the president's arrival here in Northeast Wisconsin, let's send it over to Austin Straubel Airport. Matt Jarko there live. Matt? Stacy, we got a copy of the school's investigation a little after 3 this afternoon. We read it through, made some phone calls, and made our way to Little Chute High School. Now, included in the school's investigation is an email sent by that former student. The school's investigation says it was finished in 2010 and says 2 people the alleged victim reportedly told about the situation could not remember it. Now, the investigation says that after weighing that, plus what the former student said, plus the teacher's denial and his record, the school decided there wasn't enough evidence that something inappropriate happened here. Now, state law says that administrators who have reasonable suspicion that a child was abused must report it to authorities. Court documents say the school did not report it to police. We asked school administrator David Botts, who ran this investigation, for a call this afternoon. We have not heard back. Good evening, and tonight, the beginning of a new focus at NBC 26. We're taking on drunk driving here in Wisconsin.
And we're calling it Project Drive Sober.
This is something that we have not done before. And instead of us telling you why it's important, take it from the people whose family members have been killed.
It was a Friday afternoon.
August 14th, 2015.
July 11, 2009.
The dates come easy. It's the comfort that does not for the people whose family members have been killed in drunk or drugged driving crashes.
It was the most horrific night of our lives.
According to the DOT, there were more than 6,000 alcohol-related crashes last year in Wisconsin. 169 people died. That's compared to an average of about 230 deaths per year statewide over the last decade.
And I understand that addiction is involved. We're talking about alcoholism is a part of the problem, especially for the repeat drunk drivers, but nobody's addicted to driving.
And that's the idea behind NBC 26's Project Drive Sober. It's not about drinking, it's about drinking and driving. We're hearing from state lawmakers, from police, and of course, from the family members left behind.
The impact on motorcycle is up there, and I believe there are 4 passengers in the Suburban.
We had to go back home carrying my husband's suitcase, and we're minus 1 person. It's so surreal going back in the house. It's been a nightmare ever since.
Paula Patoka's nightmare started summer 2015. Watched a repeat drunk driver hit and kill her husband. She and her children were in a truck, her husband Roger on a motorcycle driving in front of them.
It happened so fast. We go from happy and singing the Beatles to, oh my God, the guy's come across the road.
De Pere's Tony Garvey was the oncoming driver. He died as well. The crash was in Shawano County. The Patokas were 10 minutes from reaching their destination, a vacation. Instead, where they ended up is their new life, without Roger.
We had to bring his suitcase home, and I just kind of walked around the house like, what do we do now?
The idea of Project Drive Sober is to have fewer families having to ask themselves that question. We'll also ask, why do some convicted drunk drivers keep getting arrested? Garvey had at least 3 drunk driving convictions before he slammed into Roger's motorcycle.
It didn't have to happen. It was a choice that guy made.
Another choice these families talk about is the choice lawmakers have. Will Wisconsin remain the only state where someone's first OWI is basically a traffic ticket? It's not a criminal charge.
Something's got to change because this isn't right.
Green Bay Police Sergeant Mike Netzger has been working for that change since his stepdaughter Ashley and her friend Talia were killed in a 2008 crash. On charges involving alcohol or intoxication, Henrietta Geske was either acquitted or had the charges dismissed, but she was convicted on 2 counts of first-degree reckless homicide, and a judge sentenced her to 80 years in prison.
We had another good family friend of ours who had lost a child say that you have become part of a club that nobody invited you to. And it's true.
That club counting these families as members.
They don't have a father anymore. They miss him very much. Very much.
It never really goes away. I mean, there are always reminders. There's always the empty chair at a holiday celebration or a birthday.
There's always the sadness of, or this wonder, what would he be doing now?
It's Sergeant Netzger's job to be on the scene when new families are forced to become part of that club.
And I pray to God I never have to knock on another door, but I'm sure I'll have to.
The hope behind Project Drive Sober is reducing the chance that Sergeant Netzger or one of his colleagues will have to knock on your door. And we heard Paula Patoka in that story talking about bringing home her husband's suitcase after he was killed in a crash. She says she still has his clothes kept together at their home. And the CDC says most of us have it in our blood. We're talking about PFAS. PFAS are man-made chemicals, and PFAS are used to make products that resist heat, stains, or water. The state says we can find PFAS in nonstick cookware, stain-resistant carpet, and certain firefighting foams. And PFAS can contaminate water. According to the EPA, PFAS can build up in our bodies over time, and studies show increased cholesterol with limited findings connected with infant birth weights, immune system impacts, cancer, and thyroid effects. So with all of that in mind, the DNR within the last year asked more than 100 wastewater plants here in our state to test wastewater for PFAS. Out of those 125 requests, only a handful are in the yes column. Among those who said no are Appleton's wastewater treatment plant and New Water, which includes Green Bay. Jason Knutson is the DNR's wastewater section chief.
PFAS are used quite ubiquitously throughout society, but they oftentimes stem from industrial sources as the highest magnitude sources of these compounds.
So in general, how much of local wastewater is coming from industry? At New Water, about 30% of their wastewater comes from industry. For Appleton Utilities, it's about 10%. Both utilities declined the DNR's request to test the water that comes in and the water that goes out for PFAS. That DNR request was optional. Doug Oitzinger is the former mayor of Marinette. He is outspoken on the issue of PFAS and health.
The idea is the DNR is asking you to find out, do you have a problem? And next of all, can you identify the source of the problem? We can't begin to fix it if we don't know where it's coming from.
In Appleton, wastewater flows into the plant from homes and businesses. It's treated, and the finished water goes into the Fox River. Also left over is what's called biosolids. The city website says the biosolids are stabilized and nutrient-rich, called a safe and natural agricultural product. Let's say that this is wastewater. Now, Knutson with the DNR says that PFAS in wastewater generally gets split up between the water that flows back out of the plant and the biosolids left behind. But we don't know if PFAS are flowing into the Appleton plant in the first place because they're not testing for PFAS. According to an NBC 26 Records request and conversations with farmers or landowners, Appleton biosolids last year were put on more than a half dozen northeast Wisconsin farm properties where crops like corn, soybeans, wheat, or alfalfa are grown. None of the farmers or landowners we reached wanted to talk with us on camera. New Water incinerates its biosolids or sends them to landfill. Treated water from the plant goes to the Fox River. We asked Oitzinger if he'd like to see more utilities agree to the PFAS testing.
I would like to see all of them agree.
Officials from Appleton Utilities and New Water declined our request for an interview. Now, the DNR official you saw in the story told me that identifying the potential sources of PFAS might be even more important than testing for PFAS. So on that front, Appleton Utilities asked nearly a dozen of their industrial accounts about any PFAS products those accounts use. Only one was a clear yes. And New Water says in a statement they will work to minimize the sources of PFAS. You can read more of their statement on NBC26.com.
Because we've issued the warrant doesn't mean you're going to miraculously find the individual.
Here is one such warrant, and that warrant is what our story is about tonight, and when one of them is issued when it comes to a registered sex offender whose whereabouts authorities say is unknown. This is an NBC 26 investigation.
Where was he? 27-year-old Dwight Chisholm is a registered sex offender convicted of sexual assault of a child in Brown County. After his prison sentence, authorities said in June of 2018 that his whereabouts had been unknown for a year, hadn't been calling in to report where he was staying. But at some point, Stephanie says she knew where he was, just didn't know who he was.
Have you ever seen this person?
Yes, I have seen this person. That person helped me find my dog when he ran away, and I have that person on Facebook as well.
You've seen this person in your neighborhood?
Yes, I have.
Do you know that he's a registered sex offender?
No, I did not know that. That's pretty shocking to me.
Then we told Stephanie about records showing that after Chisholm was whereabouts unknown in June of 2017, a year and a half went by before a warrant went out for his arrest on a charge of sex offender failed to provide information.
It doesn't make sense. Like, why here a year and a half? You know, like, it just doesn't make sense.
Matt Mandich lives down the street. This is near Main and Baird Streets, East Green Bay.
That's way too long a time. Something should be done about that.
Authorities say police eventually found Chisholm here. Court paperwork saying Chisholm met a 17-year-old boy online and twice went into this garage with the teen for sex last month. His new charges include child enticement. We reached out to his attorney, but we have not heard back. At the time the suspect was charged, court documents listed this property as his address, and court documents say this is where police arrested the suspect. So where is this property? Well, walk down the sidewalk a bit, look to your left, and you'll find Green Bay's East High School. We asked for a comment from the person renting the home. We did not hear back. Police say that unless an offender has a special exemption, it's against local law for certain registered sex offenders to live here. There's a buffer zone around areas like schools and parks. As far as what neighbors thought about the records showing that year and a half timeline,
I would say they're absolutely right. I agree with them. I mean, that time frame is too long. There's a number of factors that could play into that delay. Some of them are due to staffing in our office. Some of them are due to the Department of Corrections attempting to work with people before they refer them.
The state of Wisconsin versus Dwight Evan Chisholm.
While Chisholm is now in jail on the new charges, authorities say there are other Brown County sex offenders whose whereabouts are unknown. Elton Smith was convicted of sexual assault of a child in Brown County. After his prison sentence, records show his whereabouts as unknown as of January 2017. Authorities say a warrant went out for his arrest that same month, but he hasn't been found. And there's James Stenberg. Records say whereabouts unknown since the end of this March. Last place he told authorities he was staying was near where the Fox and East Rivers meet in Green Bay. Authorities say a warrant was out for him within a week. He also has not been found.
No attorneys were listed for the last two suspects in this story, so we could not reach out for comment. As far as the 18-month gap in the Dwight Chisholm case, the Wisconsin DOC says he no longer was on probation. They sent a statement that says in part, quote, Mr. Chisholm was homeless while living in Brown County. Since he did not have a permanent residence, it was difficult for staff to try and locate him when he appeared to be out of compliance with the sex offender registry. It goes on to say, staff must take additional steps to investigate the person's whereabouts than they would for someone who is not homeless. Examples of that could be to try to contact a person via their family, places they frequent, or other options. The DOC had that case for a year before they sent it to the DA's office. And a final note here, the Brown County prosecutor, the DA we talked with in the story, says he is in the process of hiring more attorneys. That, he says, should streamline the process in charging someone once the DA's office does get a report on a sex offender who is not reporting in. As far as registered sex offenders, if you see something that doesn't look right tomorrow, Halloween, or any other day, you can call this state hotline. It's on your screen right now, 1-877-234-0085.